there, friends. I've got a review today, and it is for The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. So The Hobbit is about a hobbit named Bilbo Baggins. And hobbits are little humanoid creatures that basically are smaller and cozier than people. They, at full height, they tend to be about half the size of human beings, and they just tend to be a bit not homebody, because they enjoy having parties and social occasions, but they don't like going out on adventures. They don't like going out, into the world. They like staying in their own little town. And so Bilbo is approached by a wizard and 13 dwarves and asked to go on an adventure, and is kind of wrangled into an adventure. And so their mission is to get these 13 dwarves home back that was stolen by a dragon. And of course, it's not just these 13 dwarves. It's like the entire dwarven race, or their line and family, once lived in this mountain that the dragon stole. And their quest is to get it back. So he embarks on this adventure and kind of gets dragged through the wet and the muck and the troubles of adventuredom. And it's, you get to follow poor little Bilbo as he goes on his very first adventure. So the plot. The plot is very straightforward, very easy to follow. This book was written for younger readers by Tolkien, and so it was just a rather direct plot. You only follow Bilbo for the most part. I'm trying to think if there's any part that you really don't. The only thing I can think of is at one point Gandalf sort of tells his story. But so yes, you only follow Bilbo. It's a very easy to follow plot. It is a very fascinating and very interesting plot. You get caught up into it very quickly because it starts out with just Gandalf showing up on Bilbo's doorstep and, oh hey, you're gonna go on an adventure. And it's all very enjoyable. I really love it. Every time I read it, I've read it several times at this point, and it never disappoints me. So yes, the plot is very solid. It's a classic, and there's a reason why it's a classic. All right. So on to the world building. Well, Tolkien is kind of known for his world building. I'm not going to leave it at that because that I feel like that would be very cheap. But the world building in The Hobbit is definitely every setting that you encounter through Bilbo's eyes has a distinct feel and has a distinct presence, I suppose. You understand that every setting is different, and every setting has had a history, and it just feels so much bigger than this one little story. And I think that is something that is very important in world building, and something that The Hobbit does very well. It makes it feel like a world, not just this tiny little line of a world that was set into be around the plot, if that makes sense. And Tolkien does a wonderful job with that and has references to things, and of course he has expanded on that in later books and all over the place. But even just within The Hobbit, the world building is very fascinating and is enough to make me want more and to it's very pleasing. And the way that he depicts it is very interesting as well. I guess I really felt a lot of the things, like when they go into Mirkwood, I felt like almost I live in the southeastern United States, and sometimes we get these summer days that are just muggy and the heat is just oppressive and the humidity feels smothering. And the way that he described Mirkwood, I just felt one of those days happening to me. And yes, the world building was just fantastic in this tale. So last but not least, the characters. This one I am actually a little bit torn on. I love The Hobbit. I love this book so much, and I want to give it all positive marks. And Bilbo is so fantastic. But he is really the only character you get a whole lot from in this book. You get a little bit from Gandalf, and you get a little bit of his personality, but he really just isn't there a lot. And the dwarves just don't get a lot of dialogue. They don't get a lot of personality or anything. Of course, it's I think 15 characters, main characters total in one little book. Like it's a tiny little book. Of course, you can't expect a whole lot of character growth from that. But really the only defined character in this book ends up being Bilbo. And while it pains me to say it, I feel like this is the weak point in the book. So yeah. And with that being said, I love The Hobbit so much, and it's physically painful for me to admit that it has a fault. And I highly recommend it for anybody who is just getting into fantasy, or anybody who is just getting into classic fantasy, especially. Hi, Seuss. Sorry, my cat's meowing at me. But yes, what's wrong? What's wrong? So yes, I highly recommend this to anybody who is just getting into fantasy, especially, or just getting into classic fantasy. But honestly, to anybody at all, any fantasy reader. I really enjoy this book. I have reread it more times than I know. At this point, I love this book. And I hope that this review was helpful to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you around.